Can you show me, because we're going to use some hermeneutics, can you show me anywhere in the Old Testament where that word perpetual is not perpetual? Because again, I understand you're appealing again.
Sure.
No. Hold on. God's laws. Were any of God's laws?
Hold on.
Now, wait a minute. I thought I was going to get to have a talk here.
You asked a question.
Hang on a second, sir. Be quiet. Okay. Hang on a second.
Well, there you go. I will mute you because it's not your show. You asked the question. I'm going to give you the answer. Genesis 6:4. The word olam is used referring to those who were of old. Deuteronomy, just rattle off all the ones where it's used, not referring to perpetual. Genesis 6:4, Deuteronomy 32:7, Joshua 24:2, 1 Samuel 27:8, Job 22:15, Psalm 24:7, 24:9, 25:6, 41:13, 77:9, 90 verse 2, 103 verse 17, 106 verse 48, 119 52, 143 verse 3, Proverbs 8:23, Proverbs 22:28, Proverbs 23:10, and Ecclesiastes 1:10. Should I go on for more?
Blah, 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 blah.
This is Apologetics Live. To answer your questions, your host from Striving for Eternity Ministries, Andrew Rappaport.
All right, we are live, Apologetics Live. I always love that introduction. Blah, 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 blah. But we are live Thursday night. We're here to answer any of your apologetics questions. So if you have questions for us, just go to apologeticslive.com, apologeticslive.com, and you just have to click the duck. That's the StreamYard logo, although it may be changed because they just merged with Hopin. So we'll see what happens there. But you just join there. That's the link to join. You can come in, ask any questions you have. We will seek to answer them. And as I say each time, I can answer any question you have about God and the Bible. So if you want to challenge me, come on in and try. But we'll see. So we do have some folks that are in backstage going to be coming in, but and one just dropped. But fortunately, that wasn't Dr. Silvestro that just dropped. So that's good. He's packing a bag for tomorrow, I think. I can see him, but you guys can't yet. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. So this is a ministry of Striving for Eternity. We are here to basically try to teach apologetics, teach folks how to do apologetics. And this is going to be an episode, I think, at least with what I have planned. We'll see how many people come in and ask questions, but I think that we're going to do some things here that will be extremely helpful and in training people to identify and spot some techniques. And then I got a couple other plans, but I want to add a new segment to teach you guys a little bit of logic and different fallacies, things like that, how to spot some things that you may see on the street. So let me bring in, I mentioned Dr. Silvestro. You look like you're packing up there. Where are you going tomorrow?
Well, the same place you are tomorrow. So we're heading out to Illinois, and we're going to teach the Biblical Hermeneutics seminar between Friday and Saturday, and then preach on Sunday.
Yeah, so we'll be out at it's Hardinville Church. So if you're in Hardinville, Indiana, and want to come check it out, you can. It's Hardinville Christian Church is the name of the church. Just it's Friday night 5 to 9 and Saturday night 5 to 9. Then Anthony will be teaching the Sunday school, and I'll be doing some preaching in the morning service on Sunday. So he's packing up, unlike me, who's already packed up. Some of us plan ahead, right, Pastor Justin?
Some do.
Yeah.
Let me add that blah, 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 blah.
I just figured I'd give you a lead in.
So Justin, you're going to help me with this one.
Go ahead.
I want to illustrate a logical fallacy.
Okay, which one?
Well, if I tell you which fallacy, then you might know what I'm doing. So
okay, go ahead.
We're gonna do a little experiment here. Okay. But I'm gonna make the claim that I know for a fact your name is Steve, and you were born in Italy in 1915. Now, your job, Steve, is to prove that you're really Justin Pierce. And that you weren't born in Italy, but in America, and you weren't born in 1915, if you're up to this challenge. So, Steve, go ahead. How would you prove that you're not Steve from Italy from 1915?
My birth certificate.
Your birth certificate. And what does that state?
That I was born
When?
1973.
No, see, that's a forgery. I mean, even Barack Obama had a fake one of those.
A driver's license?
Dude, I had fake driver's IDs when I was 18. Okay. You can get those on eBay nowadays.
Hopefully they're going to have vaccine ones here real soon.
I've got an idea. How about my high school yearbook?
What's that going to show?
That I had a whole lot of fun in high school.
So you're seeing that no matter what argument, whatever kind of evidence Pastor Justin gives, I can make an excuse. Now, this is something you're going to see very often when evangelizing or doing apologetics. It is called confirmation bias. In other words, I start with the conclusion that his name is Steve, born in Italy in 1915. And no matter what he says, I will find a way to ignore his evidence and only accept the evidence that I like. So what I'm doing is I'm going to find a way around it. It's a technique that you'd end up seeing people do, where what they're going to do is keep searching until they can find a way of explaining things. Now, by the way, you'll get this with, like, every cult does this. Okay. Every single cult will do this. And what they do is they will end up stating that, they'll have a way of explaining all the problems that you point out. And so you sit there with people going, why don't they see this? Well, they don't see it because they're suffering from confirmation bias. All right. So that is a new segment we're going to try to do. We're going to take a different thing every once in a while and try to either illustrate it or explain it. So Justin, you just put up a thing on screen about reviews. So thank you for that reminder, because we did get a new review this week. And we do appreciate, actually, do we get to? No, I think TZC Phil was from last week. So we got a 5-star review from Deadpool Wilson. I don't know if he's dead in a pool or what, but Deadpool Wilson says, spot on podcast. I just came across this podcast and have to say it is spot on. I do have 2 questions. The episode with both Justins talking about Paula White and Kenneth Copeland. I've always heard about people who repeat things over and over are casting some kind of spell of sorts. Do you think they are invoking something or doing this? Also, when someone calls themselves a, quote, prophet, unquote, they are wrong because Jesus Christ was the last prophet. Thank you for your ministry. If you could guide me in the right direction on this, it would be greatly appreciated. Wish I could give you more stars. Sincerely, Jason from Luxembourg, Pennsylvania, my home state. Nice. There, by the way. So
thank you very much.
I wasn't sure with the second one. He had a question mark after it, but it wasn't really a question. It was more a statement that people that say their prophets are wrong. I would agree, they're wrong.
So what would Prophet Anthony say about that?
Oh, smack you. So let's, and you do have up on the screen, if you want to leave us a review, just go to lovethepodcast.com/apologetics live, and the A and L in Apologetics Live are capitalized. Don't know if it matters. I should try seeing if I can get to it without. So to the first question he asked about Paula White and Kenneth Copeland, when they were last week, we were doing this thing where they kept repeating words. In Kenneth Copeland's case, I just think, and I know Justin Peters agrees, that he just seems demon possessed.
I think he is too.
I don't know that he's trying to bring about a curse or anything, but it's I think that he just seems to be. I think that he seems to be where he can't even think about what he's going to say next. And if you watch him long enough, you see where he just literally breaks mid-sentence sometimes and just starts repeating something. It's very odd. With Paula White, I think what she was doing was more in line with what you see from some of the African American or Black preachers, where they get into that cadence, and that cadence gets the amens going and stuff. Now, Anthony, you witnessed this, so you'll know this story. And you already know who I'm talking about, I think, with the smile. We have a friend of ours, Clifford, and Clifford we were in in a lobby of a place we're staying, and it was a Christian housing, and Clifford was basically saying that, in Black churches, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. That they will amen a nursery rhyme if you're doing it to the cadence. And I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. No one is going to do that. I said, first off, how would you end up doing a nursery rhyme to cadence? So he starts doing, little Miss Muffet, she sat on her muffet. I mean, he's doing this whole thing, and some woman is walking by and goes, amen, brother, preach it.
Oh, man.
A nursery rhyme. And he actually got a name. I just put my hands in my face and was like, I can't believe this. And so, someone is asking, is that Clifford from Repentant Witness Outreach? Yes, it is. And that's where it happened when we were at Repentant Witness Outreach in New York City. So there is this thing where the repetition gets people riled up into a fever pitch, and that is what that you end up seeing. I don't know how much of it is trying to invoke a curse or something like that. So, but I saw this review and I forgot to call Justin Peters and ask what his thought is. So we're just going to have to get him back on to answer that question.
I think so.
And you'll have to remind me that we have that question for him.
Absolutely.
Right.
One thing I want to throw in here while you're talking and while you're at it, you took a breath, so I want to jump in here.
Okay, so we're going to.
Actually, what I want to throw in is if you have questions on the side and we don't get to them or we don't see them, we do have the little added incentive for us to see them. And Anthony wants to take a sip of water and then tell us about that real quick.
Who does?
Anthony does. Andrew.
Water. Yeah. Man, oh man.
They're twins. I can't tell who's who.
Oh, please.
I was surprised I didn't get kicked off the show for that.
Well, you're gone. No. All right. So if you're on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on apologeticslive.com, you can actually go over to the YouTube page, watch from there. But in the comments under YouTube, there is a little $sign. If you click that, that's called a super chat. That gets you that donates the money to Striving for Eternity. So it is a 501c3 ministry. So that is tax deductible. But if you donate there, that pops the question up differently so that we see it and it stays there for a while, so we get to see it. So that is a way to make sure your question gets asked. So we're gonna try. We have a number of people backstage with some questions, which is good. So we're gonna get to them. I may not get to the thing that I plan to pull on Justin Pierce. He heard a little bit before we started live, so we'll see. But we're first gonna bring in Michael. Michael was here last week. And he goes to bed early, so he couldn't stick around for the whole thing. If he speaks a little funny, folks, we'll try to translate. He is Canadian. So the Canadian atheist.
Thanks,
Michael, how are you tonight?
I'm really good. Justin,
Michael, let me
it's
ask you a
so
question.
unfair. I got to cut you off just 1 second. It's
Go
so
ahead.
unfair. It's bad enough that you hardly get a chance to speak, let alone him kicking you off the channel. Like that's brutal.
bad.
That's brutal. I feel you. You come on my show. I'll never silence you at all.
I appreciate that.
He
I'm
just-
trying. I am
you go.
honestly trying to
I
get
know.
my schedule timing.
I
One thing for everybody to know, as I've dealt with atheists for years, there tends to be a vitriol and an anger that comes from both sides. There comes this idea of I'm right and you need to know, and why don't you know? As a reformed person myself, I kind of understand that you're blind until God gives you sight to see. It's our job to explain the truth and love and be gracious to be kind, not to be condescending and try to fight all the time. And so when Michael came in the first time, I honestly didn't know what to expect, and I thought it was going to be kind of a contentious little, back and forth and whatnot. And I did. I thought, oh man, this is going to be fun. And Michael, you've been on what? Well, I mean, let's not
Probably
count
five.
last week.
Maybe
Yeah,
5.
not maybe 5 times, not
Yeah.
counting last week.
Yeah.
And because you were backstage and we talked backstage a little bit, but we actually had a conversation off air. Michael and I did for what 45 minutes or more, and it was just it was fabulous,
Yeah, it's good talk.
And guys, we don't have to be contentious and angry and screaming and yelling, getting people's faces about it.
What do you mean we can't get angry? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but we don't have to. I mean, sometimes it's it's fun to with Anthony. It's just part of it. But
Yeah, Anthony, not Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, not Andrew, because Andrew's just pure as wind-driven snow, and everybody knows
Puppy dog.
Puppy dog.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, and the reality is that, and Andrew, you and I have said this, I think when you were on the podcast, we said that is that we get we're going to get further with just conversation than just yelling at each other. And honestly, the time you were on a few months back now, I got some great responses from that, from hardcore atheists saying, great conversation, glad it stayed above board.
I've gotten that from a number. I got that when I was on Skylar Fiction's program.
Yeah.
Some others,
It's because you're not a jerk.
Hey.
Just not around you. Just Justin and I. Then
just with me. It's
yeah. So what question for us tonight?
Well, I got to ask you a question first. The clip, the blah blah blah, was that Senior Batman?
That is.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, if you can call it a debate, I had a debate with him on Modern Day Debate, and he's a special kind of guy.
Yeah, he is.
I'm keeping it very PG. But so a couple weeks back, after the Capitol riots,
I got to stop you there.
Oh,
because they weren't riots; they went in taking photos.
Okay, sure.
Happening for 7 months on the city streets where they're burning buildings.
Those were also riots. I wouldn't call them anything but.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like calling the Korean War a police action. Anyway, after that, you came on and we're talking about how how conservatives and how Christians should respond to that. And I found it very interesting. And something that I've noticed a number of times is how, I don't want to say dog, but you guys kind of get on, socialism and socialists and these extreme leftists and stuff like that. And so I wanted to have a conversation a little bit about the problem you have with socialism and why sometimes it seems like you conflate it with communism.
Well, the difference I would make between communism and socialism, communism is a form of socialism, but at its core is atheism. And that's one of the distinguishing factors between the two.
I don't think I disagree with you.
And communism is the end game. I mean, socialism is the agenda. Communism is the end game.
So in Canada's largely socialist. So are they just like on a really long game? Because we've been doing this since Canada's inception. So is it like a 500-year plan?
Well, you have. I think,
on, Anthony.
Well, no, actually, before you say that, Marx actually said that.
Mm-hmm.
Marx actually stated that the end game or end goal of the socialistic movement is communism, and it's to move towards that direction. So that we have to be honest about that. He's right. That is the end game. Whether it gets there or not, your idea of democratic socialism or everything else, whether it gets there or not, that's not the question. The question is what is the catalyst behind the narrative? What's the catalyst behind the action, the movement? What is it all about? And as Andrew just said, it begins with an anti-theist point of view. It's not just atheist, because Michael, you and I have talked about this. Mm-hmm. There is a big difference between being an atheist and an anti-theist. The anti-theist will absolutely go against everything that God has laid out, because he doesn't want there to be evidence for God, and every evidence for God is a slap in the face, if you will. Now, I won't say a theological or a doctrinal slap in the face, and so you have to do everything you can to counter that, and that's what we're seeing happening in America today. The difference between Canada and America is America's
careful now, careful, brother.
But America's constitutional foundation was based in Judeo-Christian values, at least to some degree. I'm not saying everybody was a Christian or anything like that, but it was a vast majority of our laws and our understandings come from the Scripture. Well, when you say one nation under God, and that's your mantra, that's your creed, and you decide to turn against that, you don't just go like Canada did and modified socialism, modified, social light. You have to go full bore, because if your foundation, if your laws, if your structures are based in Judeo-Christian values, you've got to turn everything on its head and say, look, we repudiate everything about our old history. And that's because we saw that this nation, if you go back in our history, we saw that this nation was divinely orchestrated and ordained by God to stand against all of the leaders and all of those monarchs that you guys are still kind of under, like we talked about earlier. Sure. And for the socialist mentality, if you're going to come in and change America, especially, that was a light of the world to tell people about Christ and had these things about democratic represented republics and everything else. If you're going to do that, you have to completely upheave the nation and the mores, the moral foundations, all of those values. You have to find a way to change that structure, and that's why you're seeing such a drastic fight right now within America that you didn't see with Canada.
So it's interesting. You said a lot there. So
but you did say it was true, right?
Michael, he didn't get much breath in there to take a breath to let you get in, just for the record.
I did on purpose, because if I do, I know you guys are like, oh, let me come in.
Yeah. So a couple things there. While I don't think anyone can know the mindset of the American founders, the U.S. Constitution is wholly secular based. It actually omits any creator. What was interesting what he said about Canada is, I can't remember whether it's the third or the fourth line of the Canadian Constitution actually recognizes the supremacy of Almighty God. That's actually worded in our Constitution. And ironically, we are flipped, from a secular perspective versus a religious perspective. But then the other thing you said, Justin, which I really like to get your take on, is what is the socialist mentality?
It depends on where you're at and what you're defining it as.
You said it. You said it. Can you define it?
Okay. Well,
what's your view of the socialist mentality?
Well, like Andrew was trying to say, we start with an anti-theist point of view, and we move towards how can we as humanity operate in a world apart from a social and a mental and a cognitive structure that is inundated with God. You think about it this way. In Israel, in the Old Testament, everything revolved around God. Every moment of life revolved around God. Thus saith the Lord. What does God decree, and how should we behave? In Christianity, everything revolves around Christ, and we understand Christ, and we understand the Scripture and whatnot. I don't know what that was.
That was called unprofessional. You left your phone on. Oh no, that was Anthony. Oh, look at that.
That was a timer.
Anthony trying to get a word in.
Oh, you want the word? Go ahead, brother. I'll let you finish.
No, okay.
Look, I can't believe he cut you off like that, man.
Can you believe that?
That's cold-hearted. That's cold-hearted.
There's a good brother in Kentucky that was calling. I'm going to have to call him back afterwards. No, look, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
When we understand, Michael, I don't think you understand the correct foundation of the country. So let me just read this from the Declaration of Independence. Right, this is where the early fathers of this country founded this country, declaring their independence from England. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they were endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right then and there, we see that they acknowledge Creator God, and that it's Creator God who's foundational for us to actually have rights that are transcendent, right? That's rights that humans have. It doesn't matter what time period you live in or where you live, those rights are always the rights that you have. And the reason why is because from God. And I know you listened to me a couple of weeks ago, and that's why you wanted to talk last week. So I'm not telling you anything new, but that was in the Declaration of Independence. Then going forward, what did they do in the Declaration of Independence? They said that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Well, guess where that comes from? Romans 13, 1 Peter 2. Yep. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that wherever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it or abolish it, which is inferred from Romans 13, 1 Peter 2. And to institute a new government, and then goes on. But here's the reality is that they started this country out with this Declaration of Independence, acknowledging God, acknowledging rights only come from God, and acknowledging that governments are instituted by man for the purposes of carrying out God's commands and for the purpose of carrying out what God's morality is and the purpose of protecting the rights that are God-given. That's the foundation. Then we go forward into the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Now there's rights that are listed out, some of which are straight up biblical. Others would be as consequences of the fact that we have rights biblically is what's laid out in the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution is there to protect it. So I mean, that's really foundationally what we see there. And so now take that knowledge with what Pastor Justin had just said a few minutes ago, in that we as people in America, first and foremost, this is people all across the world, again, regardless of time period, we all have certain God-given inalienable rights. Every single human being has this. And so it doesn't matter what country you live in. America is extra special because not only do we have God's law,
we're special,
and we are really special, yes. But thanks, Justin.
Anthony just always thinks he's special.
I'm really special. I'm Italian in America. No, but so in America we have these foundational documents so that we are both people of God, of our Creator, and we have a Constitution that protects those rights. So we kind of have two sides of a coin, so to speak, that we fight for, and that's why you see in America people are so upset. What I find interesting is that we have a lot of people who scream for liberties, but they don't have a correct biblical foundation. And so, if anything, if you want to pick apart anybody, those are the people you should probably look at, are those patriots who talk about rights and don't have the foundation for it.
Well, I like what Richard Neal says here. Speaking of you, Anthony, he says he's Italian. They're kind of long-winded. Oh, Richard, you don't know. Yeah, Phil says typical Anthony. Let me just, before you respond, Michael, let me just give you one other thing.
Hey, hold on a second. That's the teaching side. We are called to explain things thoroughly so anybody can understand them. And sometimes we use our hands as well to paint the picture as we speak.
Yeah, I actually question your roots because you don't use your hands nearly as much.
I'm trying to get tame.
Yeah. Well, and you have to think about what he was talking about with the Constitution, as we're talking about with the Constitution.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Andrew. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say one thing with the Constitution, because, Michael, you said we can't know what the founders' thinking was, but we can because they've written a lot.
Wrote it down.
I mean, unlike our generation that blogs about nonsense, they actually wrote meaningful things, and they would explain stuff of what it is they're thinking. I mean, you read the letters back and forth between Thomas Jefferson and Adams, and you can see, I mean, they had strong views. Yes, so what? I'm Jewish. I speak with my hands too. I see you there. So you know how to keep an Italian or a Jewish person quiet?
Tie their hands up.
There you go. Okay. So
Anthony's got his hands on his phone, so he can't speak.
So I mean, the thing is, we do have a way of seeing what it is their thoughts were, because they wrote it down, especially Adams and Jefferson, because so much of their dialogue was recorded in letter, and really Adams was the writer, and of the Constitution where Jefferson gets all the credit, but he was really the editor. You know, most of that was really the mind of Adams, and he was a devout Christian.
Keep in mind too is that the founding fathers have the Federalist Papers, so we have hundreds and hundreds of pages of explanation as to their thought process.
Exactly.
They also were students of guys like John Locke, who were philosophers and Christian. And so they got a lot of foundational stuff from them. So it's not like these guys just on a whim threw this stuff out there. This was stuff that was well thought out. It's been out for a long time. And a lot of these were counter arguments for the junk that was coming up with Karl Marx. Because Karl Marx wasn't the first guy to think of this stuff, right? It was going on for a good 100 years before that. And Karl Marx is one who really codified this well and really set it on fire, so to speak, because so much stuff came out after him.
But I do want to get to one of Michael's questions that I don't think got answered, and that's, you know, what would we say about Canada, because it has been socialist for a long time, and it's not the only one. I do think there's a different level, Michael, when you have countries who are socialistic. That either, like you're saying, Canada didn't start out free with the freedoms that there were in America, where you have countries where there was some freedom, and especially where you had a middle class that then goes to socialism. You usually see that doesn't go well. It usually goes violently, and it usually, unfortunately, goes quickly, but it's hard for people to lose all those freedoms. And so there is, I think, a distinction that we can make. I mean, you look at Europe and you look at Canada, and there was, like in Europe, there was a back and forth, you know, of where freedoms, and then all of a sudden, you know, there'd be more socialist, and then you'd have monarchs, and it was just constantly fighting and battling. But it was a slower process than, you know, we have seeing in places like, you know, Cuba or Venezuela or Germany in, you know, before World War II, or, you know, Mao with China and Stalin, and you have these others where that was a much quicker process, a quicker change, more radical change. So it's going to be different than what you'd have in Canada. So I don't know if when people in America are speaking of socialism, I don't think they're thinking of Europe and Canada.
Well, another thing too is you also have to consider that what you're talking about is the concept of being ruled and governed by a group, an oligarch or whatever, a group of either a monarchy or what have you. It's very easy to transition from the monarchy to the oligarchy when you already are under authoritative leadership. Okay. For America, we're of the people, by the people, for the people. And now there's a certain portion of the people says, no, we want to dominate everything, and we got to change the way our structure is. And whether you agree with it or not, you know, whether you like it or not, from a Christian perspective, we've been told to learn how to operate under any system and still maintain Christianity, and as best we can to work in that confines. The issue is somebody just posted this a minute ago. Let me see if I can find it. Phil, and I've seen this in some of the writings from some of the articles. I'm trying to pop it up. I'm sorry, Anthony. But it says, Phil says, Canada is about to throw Christian pastors in jail. Well, that's
actually, I saw that. Yeah, I actually saw that last week. I'd be curious to see a link for that. So the only thing that I've heard of personally over the last little while is pastors that are going against the COVID restrictions that have been put in place. COVID's a real thing, guys. So, you know, I mean, 450,000 Americans have died. Versus I think 13,000 Canadians. So
we have a great teaching opportunity here. Okay. Because what people may not pick up is what Michael just did is what's called a straw man argument. Nobody is saying that COVID is not a real thing.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that is the only threat of imprisonment that I've heard of. I'd be curious to see a link of some other news source.
I've heard threats of speaking against homosexuality.
Sorry, where in
Canada? Yeah.
No, I'm not. I mean, could there be something happening in a country of 37 million people I'm not aware of? Sure.
Maybe.
No, there couldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that's somewhat controversial that people kind of it catches people off guard is that it is a criminal code violation in Canada to deny the Holocaust. You can actually be charged and put in jail for that. So that's usually when the people go like,
Okay, we need that here.
Anyway, so you guys have said a lot. So when you guys were talking
Cut
about
you off and say thank you for coming on the program. And
nice. So when you're talking about so when I'm talking about socialism and stuff like that, and Anthony, I appreciate everything that you said. And so, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said churches or lighthouses are more useful than churches. And so I'm certainly not saying that that it was all one way or all the other, but I do find it interesting that you have the one document, the Declaration of Independence, which in some ways I guess mirrors a portion of our Constitution in the recognizing a God, which is fine. I do find it interesting how they've gone in these separate directions, but what in I guess modern Canada, the way socialism works is different than some of the things that you're talking about. And Andrew, you alluded to this in saying that you don't think people look at Europe and Canada when they think about socialism. They think about some other horrible systems that may well have been based in a lack of belief. Okay. I mean, Hitler and Stalin both had mustaches too, although Hitler was Catholic. But so in what I was asking about, the things you or how you would identify socialism, one of the big triggers in the U.S. is healthcare. So I'd be curious to know how you guys feel about a government-administered healthcare system.
well, we have one in America. It's called Medicare, and it's horrible. I mean, the reality is, I think that in why I think America had done so well is because we have checks and balances. The government was designed to be a check and balance to things like healthcare, business, so that you have somewhere you can go to appeal to. But once the government runs it, there is no more check and balance, because they will make laws that they're no longer accountable to have to do. So where you may have, a business can't be a monopoly, but once the government runs it, they can be a monopoly all they want. They can set whatever prices they want, and you don't have any recourse typically. Now if you have a country where they build in laws for a check and balance, fine, but typically the issue is you don't have any recourse. And when it comes to individuals' life, you do have cases where you're not making the decision, your doctor's not making the decision, some panel in government is making the decision. I have the same issue against health insurance. When you get health insurance in America, and the insurance company dictates to you what you can and cannot do for your health, instead of it being between you and your doctor deciding what you should and shouldn't do with your health. So I would have the same issue, not just with the government doing, but as well with just with a healthcare system. I think that people should be because you brought up the healthcare thing. I think that it should be something between them and their doctor that gets discussed, not some third party that's paying the bill to make the decision.
This is a typical trope that I hear from people in the US and I mean no disrespect, but don't understand how Canadian healthcare works, because a patient and their doctor is the only way decisions get made. There is no, like, I've lived here my whole life. I have family that have been involved in all kinds of different healthcare. My wife was in the healthcare fundraising industry for 18 years. She's since moved to a different field, but it's just not the case. And you may be able to point out small anecdotal accounts where things have happened, but the overwhelming majority, like if a person needs care, the decision is made between them and their doctor. There is no bat phone that they have to pick up and say, I need to find out from the government if they'll pay for this. That doesn't happen ever. It just doesn't. It just
what's really cool about that I mean, you made an emphatic statement there. And my sister only lived in Canada for 13 years and was married to a gentleman from Canada. And she actually affirmed that those things is the reason why she moved back to America, because her son was denied health care because he was too costly for some of the things that he needed to have done. And she had went through some of the same issues as well. And she was in the healthcare field as well in Canada.
Well, Canada's a big place.
Okay, in Quebec. So anyway,
Quebec, okay.
Yeah. So it does happen, and it may not happen in your very neighborhood. It may not happen there, but to say emphatically it doesn't happen anywhere, it's kind of like just a minute ago you said, "Well, I don't know everything that happens to everybody in Canada," and you're saying that you're.
I know a pastor who his son died of a very rare disease. He was here in America, and the medical bills bankrupted him. And so when he discovered his daughter had the same disease, they actually moved to Canada because of the fact that they wanted the free healthcare. The problem was they couldn't get the care because they were put on a wait list, and it was so long before they could see a doctor that they started coming to the States, and then they paid even more. So,
it's a common misconception that healthcare is free. It's not.
No, it's not. And that's the thing.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that's the point. That's the point is everybody says it's free healthcare. It's not. It's
not.
Taxed healthcare.
Even Obamacare is not free. I mean, that was they charge people. So
there's a really wise gentleman.
Yeah, I'm gonna because I know Jeremy is in the backstage and he has a short time window.
Can I have 30 seconds? Because I just posted this. I want to give you and Anthony a chance to wrap this up with Michael. Okay.
And we'll move on to the next question.
Just real quick, I posted on the side chat here, so for everybody to know, the Harbinger News. They actually talked about Bill C7, or I'm sorry, Bill C6 from the members of Parliament that voted 306-7 in favor of a motion. It was the bill that was called an act to amend the criminal code on conversion therapy that actually did make it illegal for people to try to help with those that were dealing with same-sex attractions. And that was actually illegal as far as I could read. I mean,
and that should be illegal. And that should be illegal.
So, okay. So let me kind of finish up this topic, and I would love to have you back on, Michael, and discuss some of these topics more, because I think we can really dive into some of this stuff. And here's the question I'm going to ask you the next time you come on. I'm going to give this to you ahead of time to prepare. Is what is it that you like about socialism? I don't want you to answer this tonight.
Okay.
What is it? What are the things that you think are beneficial for socialism? And the thing that I can guarantee is that Pastor Justin, myself, and Andrew will be able to point out why that isn't rooted in God, and it's the exact opposite of what God would teach in the Bible. And that fundamentally is why we have a problem with socialism. Now, let's talk about medicine for just a moment.
Oh, sure.
You did ask this particular question. Here's my issue. Hospitals in the United States, and as far as I understand around the world, all started as a result of Christian-censored medical places. And
I'm not a historian. I'm not going to pretend to know the difference.
That's okay. And slowly over time, those things got taken over by either privatized care or in general tied to a governmental system. In theory, the way socialism should work for this is that people, and don't get me wrong, there are Christian healthcare ministries in America where this works quite well, where people literally pool their money together, and you've got very low administrative costs, and those administrative costs, by people willingly pooling their money together into this big pool, you have a small administration that will then pay out on claims. So it's essentially, it's like it's having insurance, and all of
it's what's known as a cooperative.
It's a cooperative. That's right. Yeah. So that's the term for it. Where the problem comes in with socialism and government stuff is that once the government gets involved, you start to have a lot of money that goes outwards towards government. That's number one. So the layers within the governmental system starts to eat up a lot of the money. Then you have the fact that in America, medicine and dentistry, both in the insurance side as well as the prescription side, they all have special laws that that they have, and things they don't have to abide by in terms of fair trade and whatnot here in America. It's crazy stuff. It drives up costs. You have a lot of lobbying efforts that drives up costs. So for me, who's been in dentistry for years, I've been able to outline certain things that I've talked to state reps about, that if a couple of laws were passed, could fix a number of the problems in terms of unaffordability within insurance and what's going on. Nobody wants to touch this stuff. Why? Because of the lobbyists. And so why this is a socialism issue is because ultimately socialism always points towards just a few people who have all the wealth, or it's all concentrated within government, and everybody else is made to have virtually nothing and relying upon either the government or the few that are very wealthy. And our healthcare system is doing the exact same thing over time. And that's a very short answer. I can explain that a little bit more next time and get into more details.
I think Justin's about to cut you off anyway.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to laugh. You said a short answer.
Yeah.
It's a long. This takes a long time to actually work itself out.
Everything takes long for Anthony.
The one thing I'll do just before I duck out is just respond to one thing you said, Anthony, is to say, that it's not rooted in a God view. And I just, and again, not to come across as offensive, but that's not a problem for an atheist, is that it's not rooted in God. Like that's a non-issue for me. Like, it's not an issue, not rooted in God. Cool. Next. But anyway, I definitely want to not monopolize as much time. Because I got other people that want to come in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put you in the backstage just because Christian's going to have a question that's going to be kind of right along the lines of some of this, because I actually know her question.
Oh, okay. I was actually going to duck out and spend some time with my wife.
Oh, well, then duck out. You'll listen to it later, and I'm sure you'll be back.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, Justin, we got to get together. And Anthony, the invitation is extended to you as well. Please feel free, come on, and we'll have a discussion. I'll let you add our bunch of filthy heathens that listen regularly.
He'll take up the whole show talking. You'll ask him, Anthony, how are you? And then an hour later, you're gonna finally go, okay, let's close. So.
Well, no, because I can always count on the fact that either one, he can't make his Roadcaster work, or I have a mute button.
Oh man,
something will go wrong with this. It's true.
The easiest system. I mean, that's the beauty when Michael's making fun of Anthony. Like, it is the easiest type of podcasting equipment.
It truly is. I sit in envy. I got
it for him. He still has trouble. Yeah. All right, let's go real quick. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to bring Jeremy in. Jeremy, you and I were chatting a little bit. For folks who don't know, Jeremy is. Well, actually, I just thought about it. They haven't listened to the Rap Report that you're on. He will be coming up soon on the Rap Report. But Jeremy has a podcast, Do Theology, which is what we should do. And but you were recently on your Do Theology podcast. You had a debate. You were on Marvin's. I'm drawing a blank. It's not Marvin.
Marlon Wilson.
Marlon show, and where he does a lot of different debates. And you had a debate. You were supposed to be debating. You told me Skylar Fiction.
Yeah.
Quite work.
Yeah, we had set it up with Skylar a couple different times, and he just totally punked out on us last minute, both times. So one of the times, like, I was there, we were both there waiting. We waited for like an hour for him to show up, and he just didn't even respond. So it was pretty lame. But yeah, he found a last minute substitution. Marlon's got connections all over the place, and so I ended up debating a guy, Benjamin Blake Speed is his name, and he is an idealist, atheist, and believes in objective morality.
Yeah, what was your topic?
Is God the standard of morality? Was the topic. In Skylar Fiction, very committed to subjective morality. Mm-hmm. Benjamin Speed committed to objective morality. So that was a very different conversation, and he's very, very heady, very philosophical, and so anyway, it was a fun conversation.
So a couple of things that, I mentioned it might be good for folks. You had some good arguments in there. So I wanted to get you, and we want to teach people how to go about, doing apologetics. My guess was that you probably
had watched a film that, because you focused a lot on certainty.
Yeah, that's right.
So, there's I want to first have you explain what your argument was. And then, why did you focus in on, you kept going back to certainty. There were some other things and I had told you, if I had known you were doing the debate, I have a great article that's done by unbelievers. That it was done by people that weren't trying to prove Christianity in any way, on the issue of free will from an atheist perspective. And basically they did all these case studies, and I think it was like 4 or 5 case studies, and each case study showed that their conclusion was, well, we know there's no such thing as free will, but it's better to believe it. In other words, they're saying it's better to believe that you're going to be accountable to someone, because if you actually believe that you're just a chemical reaction, you're more likely to do morally bad things. Yeah. So every time morality comes up, I always bring that article up because that article is a great way of exposing that case studies show that people are more likely to lie, steal, cheat, even to get an election, it's basically whatever they can do to get what's better for them. They have less respect for their fellow man. They have less concern for others or what's right or wrong. And so the conclusion it made was that all the studies show it's better to believe we're accountable to someone. And so I would have given you that, but explain your what your argument was within this debate. And by the way, it's the Gospel Truth is the show that this airs on.
Yeah, the Gospel Truth YouTube channel is certainly worth subscribing to, and Marlon also puts everything out in podcast form. So check out the Gospel Truth. In my opening statement, I stated my thesis right from the get-go quite plainly, that the Creator is absolutely free to glorify himself by governing his creatures according to his will alone. That's my thesis statement. And ended up breaking that down throughout the opening statement. And then as the debate went on, focused on 2 things. You mentioned one of them, certainty. So in the realm of epistemology, how do we know what is true? I wanted to nail down with him, are you certain of what you believe? Because for an atheist, the best you can do is be probable. You can never be certain. And so I wanted to address that. And then the other issue was one of authority. Do you have the authority to create your own morality? Or he was appealing to Hegel and Kant. Do they have the authority to create morality for all of mankind? And of course, the answer to that is no. The Creator is the one who has all authority. He has revealed himself. He has given us the law. He has given us the standard of right and wrong. And we appeal to him and him alone, because he is the one who has all authority. He is the one who makes us certain of truth. And that was the crux of the argument. Also, I apologize for my setup here. I'm at home. I do all my recording and stuff in my office, so I'm on a laptop in my basement. Sorry about that.
You're just trying to set the record so people say that the quality we're getting now is not what they're going to hear on the Do Theology podcast. Okay,
that's exactly right.
Good job.
And by the way, we should mention that Do Theology is a member of the Christian podcast community, which we're a member of. So it's a growing list. If you want to check out all the podcasts there, just go to christianpodcastcommunity.org. So one of the things that you focused a lot on certainty. I see Anthony loves the subject of precept, so I see him getting ready to jump in.
And I was also cracking up because it sounds like you keep saying dude theology.
Dude.
Hey, dude theology.
No, that would be, it shows that Anthony doesn't pay attention when I said that's what we should all do is do theology. He shouldn't pick up on that, but so here's the one thing I would do in debates like that. I think that one of the things that he missed was the fact that he was arguing for reason, for the ability to reason.
Yeah.
Right. It would have been great to just jump on that, but yet where do you get an immaterial thing called an ability to reason? Right. This is the whole thing that we make the distinction is when we talk about the ability to reason and laws of logic and like all the stuff you guys were talking about, intelligence, and he was talking about math, and it's just he's laying that out as it just is. But why is it? And the whole reason is this comes from an immaterial entity.
Yeah,
So
in the cross-examination, we got into that a little bit. And the phrase that I used is the same phrase that I used in my other debate. I've only done 2 debates. I've got a third one in March. But my other debate with Kwaku El, a famous African-American Mormon. And in that debate over the immateriality of God, the question is, do immaterial, eternally unchanging truths exist? That's the question that anybody outside of biblical Christianity needs to reckon with. Immaterial and eternally unchanging truths. And if the answer is yeah, those exist, well, what's their source? And in this debate with the atheist Benjamin, his answer was, well, they just always exist. They have no source. He's an idealist. He, was going back to the old books that Kant wrote and saying that's the answer. But at the end of the day, appealing to the human conscience, that really doesn't solve anything. You're just a man pointing to another man, and all you can have is some sort of probability that this is true, and you never get that assurance that the human soul needs, because we're created in God's image and God has set eternity on each man's heart. And Immanuel Kant isn't going to give us that lasting peace that we need.
So, Anthony, I don't think you got a chance to listen to the debate yet, but you would enjoy it. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share with, and Precept is kind of like one of your favorite top subjects.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing to go to is the ability to reason, right? And so I've done this on the show before. I won't do it again tonight, but I enjoy that one because you can literally talk to somebody and say, "Are you having a conversation with me right now?" And they always say yes. I say, "Are you formulating the thoughts in your minds right now? Like, are you controlling the thoughts and then actually speaking them out your mouth?" Well, yeah. You'd say, well, how can you account for that if you're just a pile of random chemical reactions doing nothing but obeying laws of chemistry and physics as a result of billions of years of this, right? And so it's to me, it's a lot of fun to do that. So I'll enjoy listening to that debate coming up.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought of when you were doing the debate, that he was, with some of the stuff he was saying, this might have worked well to see what he would say, because you have so many of these guys that profess atheism and they just say, as he was trying to imply, we're basically just chemical reactions. Yeah. And when they do that, a question I've learned to ask is, I ask them, so do you believe that we should recognize people by the gender they identify themselves with? So should we accept transgender? Should we accept that there's gender fluidity? And many of the professing atheists will say yes. And so when they do, it's like, so you're telling me someone's born biologically male, so their chemicals are male, their thinking should be male, everything about them should be male. Where did they get this idea that there's something against their chemical reactions? There's got to be an immaterial source for that. And it's something that they haven't heard enough to formulate an answer for yet. They will eventually. If you remember, if you go back to the very beginning of this show, I gave you how confirmation bias is going to work. They're going to come up with a life-saving device. And so, what you see in that is that you have people who will try to figure that out, but they haven't figured it out yet. It gets them to stop and think. And the thing that they're thinking about is the fact that they can't explain where a person can be biologically one sex, but they identify as a different sex. And real quick, Chris says, On the Origin of Kinds by Anthony, Dr. Anthony Svester, who's here, does a great job with presuppositional apologetics. And so that book is available at strivingfraternity.org. So, Jeremy, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the heart of every worldview that lies outside of biblical Christianity is contradiction. And so, as you were just giving with that example, that they cannot account for their own assertions because it's self-contradicting. And so I love the documentary How to Answer the Fool. It was created, I think, by Chocolate Knox with Cross Politic, but Seitzen Bruggencate is the one, of course, who's featured mostly in that documentary. And that's really what won me over to presuppositional apologetics a few years ago. And so if anybody's not seen that, you should check that out. If you're not a reader, you should watch that 1.5-hour documentary. It's on YouTube, and it really walks you through what is at the heart of the issue when you're engaging with someone whose worldview is outside of biblical Christianity.
Yeah, we always got to do this every show, but there's John reading my book. He must be a very slow reader. He's been reading What Do They Believe for years now. You know,
I read good.
But I think John, that you've been suppressed or knocked off there. Look at this. Look at how he's got all the tabs. Pastor Dustin has got it all marked up. His looks prettier. So he's showing off Anthony's book on the origin of kinds. Yeah. So Jeremy, I know you had a short amount of time, but we wanted to recommend everyone go to listen to the Do Theology podcast for some people who don't know how to spell do, Anthony. I'm mentioning names.
Are you saying dude? Are you saying dude?
Yeah. See,
Italian theology sounds really cool.
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool. Name it Dude Theology.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's out there. So, Jeremy, any last words you want before?
Yeah, I would recommend actually that people check out my other debate with Kwaku. Go to YouTube and type in Jeremy Howard and Kwaku debate. That's about, again, is God immaterial? There aren't too many debates out there on that topic. So check that one out. A lot of the same issues come up. And yeah, it was a good debate. We actually did that one in person a little over a year ago. So it was a better format than online. Yeah. But for the podcast, go to dotheology.com. Season 3 starts on Wednesday with our interview with Ray Comfort. Won't want to miss that. So check it out this Wednesday, dotheology.com.
Yeah, you got a number of good interviews coming up.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. And you're going to be on the Rap Report coming up in about 2 weeks. We talked about basically classifying or categorizing theology, the importance of it. That actually came up in my Wednesday night Bible study. I talked about what we're discussing of where does eschatology, the study of end times, fit? Is that a secondary issue or a third issue? So
get those charts printed off, get them out, get them into the hands of the people.
So Jeremy, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. And I'm going to bring in Christian. So it's good to see your face. Haven't seen you for a long time.
I know.
Yeah, this is so Christian is she used to be when we did the NorCal event. She was always up there, but now you moved. So, but
yeah, I'm
now
in
you moved
Oregon now.
A more freer, state maybe.
It's debatable.
Maybe.
We have Kate Brown. She's not far behind Gavin Newsom. So yeah.
But at least you have horses now.
We have horses and we have land, and we are in Central Oregon where it's nice, and there's a good amount of conservatives here, and we have a lot of churches, so that's good. So yeah.
So you had sent a question. I said this might be a really good one for us to discuss here. So I'm going to let you ask your question here, and then we'll interact with it.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll give you guys some context because I gave Andrew all the context, and then I'll ask my question. So our church is embarking on a study on critical race theory, which is good. We're doing a book called Why Social Justice is Not Biblical Justice. So that's been very interesting. But I'm learning that even for me as an adult, it's all pretty hard to digest. But what I'm finding is I have a 13-year-old, I have a middle schooler, but critical race theory has permeated, completely saturated the culture all the way down to middle schoolers. I'm talking like even in conservative circles, in Christian schools. I found that just from seeing conversations my daughter has on social media and just talking to her, a lot of the kids, even at 13, use their identities to bludgeon people, especially conservative kids or kids that may have biblical values. And so I'm really struggling with that as a parent because my husband and I'm sorry, I've got notes. I wanted to keep myself on track with this. So we're trying to wrestle with this ourselves. And how do you explain this to a 13-year-old who's a good student, but I'm not going to be able to sit her down and have her read that book. And I've been looking online. There's not a lot of apologetics material for middle schoolers. You've got stuff for little kids to prime them, and then you've got stuff for high schoolers that are getting ready to go to college. But this 13-year-old age has been really, really hard. But this, to me, it just seems like a pretty urgent issue when I see kids calling each other racist and calling them transphobic and calling them homophobic. And a lot of these Christian kids were teaching them the Bible. And we've talked about evolution and abortion and all the life issues, but they don't. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but they just are unable to clap back when somebody calls them a racist. And from what I've learned from church and studying this book, that is typical activism of CRT ideology. So anyway, I was just wondering if Anthony and Andrew have ever felt led to do like a middle school apologetics type of thing.
Well,
The stuff that I teach is, and the stuff that I have online right now is, I think, middle school level and above anyway. And so, do you understand what critical race theory is in general?
I do. It's just when it trying to translate that to my daughter is a little more difficult. So my husband's going to take a stab at it as we go through this weekly study. And I'm finding that the culture has so rapidly disintegrated that we're just trying to play catch up right now. And I'm just like jumping to learning debate and telling her like, okay, let's talk about ad hominem attacks and character assassinations. Because it's just that identity bludgeoning, which is like the oppression Olympics that everybody talks about. It's really rampant, and it's shocking to me, like how quickly these 13-year-olds use it. So that's kind of where we're at. It's like I feel like we're jumping a few steps ahead, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about you identifying what it is when somebody calls you a racist, and how do you respond to that as a Christian?
So, what I always tell people is let's start foundationally with this. Okay.
Right.
And so foundationally is we go back to Genesis and we see, what does God say in terms of identity?
Right.
First of all, he made them male and female, period. Right. There's no confusion. And so transgenderism is out the door right off the bat. We see that Eve was given to Adam as his wife right off the bat. Jesus verifies it in Matthew 19 and Mark 10 when he is asked about he's asked about divorce, right? Mm-hmm. And he literally answers from Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, quotes directly from them. Okay, so that's foundational. Right. What else is foundational? That Eve was called Eve because she is the mother of all the living. Every single person on this planet that has ever been born is from Adam and Eve, which means then that there is one blood, one race. And so I lay this out right off the bat because I want us to understand something as Christians. And I've said this on the show before for others that are listening. Sorry to repeat this, but this is foundational. It's really important. There's one blood, one race. When we as Christians use the term racism, we're using a term that is not a Christian term. It is a foreign concept to the Bible. This is a term that is outside. So our kids have to understand that first and foremost. Okay. Is that there's one blood, one race. So you have to remember, Christian, I'm assuming your kids go to public school. Is that right?
No, she goes to a private Christian school, but we are in Oregon, not known for a lot of conservatism, but we are in a conservative pocket. And I would say it's a Lutheran school. I go to Grace Bible. I used to go to Grace Bible Church in Redwood City, more Calvinistic, dispensationalist, but their doctrine's okay at the Lutheran school. Like I'm in good company there, and the kids are. I don't know. It's just really overwhelming just to hear this because it's nothing I dealt with when I was growing up.
Yeah. So again, we go back to foundations. I'm going to put myself on the screen. It's easy together. Andrew, can you put us side by side, please? That possible? I don't know how to do that. Okay. That's good. Thank you. So, sorry, it's a lot easier for me to talk this way. So when we understand that foundationally, first and foremost, then we have to say, what is going on with the term racism? Why are people saying this? We have to acknowledge, right? We have to acknowledge as Christians, does an idea of racism, the idea that on the outside world, in secular world, does the idea exist that some people hold it against others that they have a different tone of skin? Well, yes, that occurs.
Sure.
That does happen. The question is it because it is, and here's another foundational thing. Critical race theory teaches that the fabric of society, so that means the laws, the rules, the thought processes, and everything in between is rigged. It's a completely rigged system against people of color. That's critical race theory.
Right.
Okay. That's not Christian. What's
No.
Christian as an explanation for what's going on out there is sin.
Right.
That's it. It's sin. It's sin. And it's sin of looking at somebody's skin color and creating acts against them or thoughts against them because of it. But it's sin, and it's individual sin. This isn't something woven into the fabric of society. And
Right.
especially now, right? So 70 years ago, 80 years ago, there were laws in the books that separated people at drinking fountains, that separated people
Sure.
in certain of restaurants and things like that. Those were laws in the books. Those were sinful that those laws were in place, but those laws are all gone now. And this is the struggle that I have when I hear people talk about critical race theory, because I tell people or ask people, name me one law that is anywhere in the books in America that you can
Right.
find that still has racism in it. Nobody can point that out. They're not there. So this critical race theory is a philosophy that's unfounded, number one, today. And number two, it's misguided, because it is trying to explain something without God, and you can't do that. We have to look at this as sin. And as I also tell people, foundationally, you can try to legislate sin, but we've got all kinds of laws in the books against murder. It doesn't stop people from murdering people. We have
Right.
laws in the book that are against stealing from others, and yet we still have thefts that occur on a daily basis. So what makes anyone think that any more laws in the books will somehow stop racism, right? Or mob mentality beating down people? That's not going to do it either. It is literally the gospel being spread and seeing God change minds and hearts to the sins they commit.
Right.
So that's foundational. I'm going to throw one more thing out at you, going back to the topic of race. Where does race come from? The Bible's one blood, one race. The only time we see the word race is I think it's 1 Peter, but it talks about a chosen race, a royal priesthood, people who are saved. Right? So God views people in one of two categories. You're either in the family of Adam, from which you were born,
Right.
or you were saved, right? You're made born again, and you were transferred into the family of God. You were made a child of God, co-heirs with Christ. Those are the only two categories that God uses today in separating people. So where does the idea of race come from? The idea that different colors come from skin. This isn't biblical. One of the tricks you will often hear from people is they will take passages in the Bible that say the word nation or nations, and they'll automatically substitute in the word race, acting like these are talking about races. They're not. When we see in the Bible, we see that there's different nations, right? God came down to the Tower of Babel, created different nations. We see in Acts 17:26 that there are many nations. He has predetermined boundaries for them. So we have nations in the Bible. We have ethnicities in the Bible, but we don't find the concept of race based on skin tone. Where does it come from? Go back to your biology textbooks. And that's why I asked you earlier if your kids go to school in public schools or not.
Right.
Christian schools, unfortunately, are still teaching this as an idea anyway.
Right. Sure.
So, and so this is where it comes.
She's learning about evolution too. I mean, and it's all kind of evolutionary.
Yeah, it's 1 Peter 2:9. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, it's horrific to think about. So go back to, you can find this on Google search. If you Google search it and look up different races back in the day, like 1940s, 1950s, there were tons of books out at that time and for years before that talked about different monkeys or different monkey-like creatures that evolved differently, some better than others. You got Caucasoids, Mongoloids, Negroids, and depending on which book, there's either 4 or 5 of them. It literally comes from there. And that's not a new thought from the 1940s either. You can trace that back to Darwin, whose title of his book was not just On the Origin of Species, right? He has a longer title, talks about favored races.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an idea that goes back a long time.
Okay.
And this is what we have to understand. This is racism and all this junk is a secular viewpoint. It's not Christian. And so I know I got long-winded again. They're all probably laughing in the background. But the reality is that's our starting point, is we have to start with the Bible for our kids.
So, and let me give you, Christian, another thing tactically to do. Okay.
Okay.
So where Anthony gave you a lot of information, I want to give you some information that you can give to your daughter. So when these things happen, she has some game plans. Okay. One of the things to do is to ask, and here I'm gonna do what Anthony wanted to do there. Huh. Just want to put Anthony in the backstage. But here's what you do. Ask questions. So when they say you're a racist, she can ask, what is the definition of racist?
Right.
Because they don't even know what they're saying with it. They're conditioned to say, if you believe in Christ, you're racist. So the first question is, what is a racist? And if they give a definition, the second question is going to end up being, well, how am I a racist? But what exactly am I doing that fits that definition?
Right.
Or what makes a Christian a racist? What are they doing? So you want to get to it. This is going to help her just being able to think clearer. But what they're doing is a very clear tactic. They want to throw an accusation out, and it gets your daughter and others defensive, and they throw their hands up, and it's like, oh, what do I do? And they want to cave to the pressure.
It does, or it provokes them. Like, I've seen some ugly conversations with these kids.
Yeah. And so the way to do it is, and I teach this in the evangelism training, if you're given a challenge, someone makes a statement, you ask a question. You don't have to answer their challenge.
Right.
So you don't have to defend yourself. Well, I'm not a racist. The reality is you don't even know what their definition is yet of what a racist is. So you first have to get that. And most often you're going to find they don't have a very clear definition. So what you could do is you can explain what a dictionary definition is for racism. And then she can look at a dictionary and say, well, this is what racism is. You're saying it's this thing over here. So are you wrong, or is the dictionary wrong? Now, granted, nowadays they're changing the dictionary to fit.
The dictionaries are changing pretty rapidly.
Yeah. And so that makes it a little bit harder. But the thing to do is first teach her to get to asking questions, to getting definitions of terms. Okay. Because one of the problems is going to be is if she's talking to someone that's believing in evolution, you can go into all the stuff like Anthony's explaining, but they're going to say, so what? Because they just don't care.
Right.
And let your daughter realize that for a lot of these people, it's not about thinking, it's about feeling. They're not thinking this through. And that's what questions will do. Questions force them to think about this because now they have to answer.
Right.
And so if your daughter starts asking questions, it does a couple of things. One, it puts them in the hot seat. They have to give the answer. The second thing, it takes all the pressure off your daughter. She no longer doesn't have to feel defensive. The other thing is it causes them to start thinking. They have to actually think through the answers. The other thing that it ends up doing, which is good, is that it will start to get where they are going to have to not only provide an answer, but they got to provide an answer without changing their thinking. Or what's going to end up happening is they start changing their thinking, which is what you really want. Right. So tactically, train her to ask questions. There's a good book Greg Kokel has put out called Tactics.
That's really that one.
Yeah. He just teaches you how to ask questions. That's basically what the whole book's about. Okay. And so that would be a tactical thing to do. As far as training up someone that's in middle school, what you do is you could train them to recognize the fact that, yes, there are some people who use terminology to suppress other people. This is the exact thing CRT is supposed to be about, right? To prevent oppression.
Yep.
And so she could ask questions. Are you against oppression? And they'll say, yes. Why are you oppressing me?
Right.
They don't think about it that way. They don't
More
realize.
questions. Right.
Yeah, it's questions, but the questions are leading, because the thing that they don't realize is they're doing the very thing that CRT claims it wants to put a stop to.
Right.
They're oppressing people for not agreeing with what they want, for not being in line with them. She can ask questions like, do you believe that we can have differing ideas and still get along? Do you believe in tolerance?
Mm.
Do you
Interesting.
believe that we should judge people? Because when they say, well, you shouldn't be judging other people. Well, you're judging me right now when you call me a racist. That's a judgment.
Right.
You see, these are things that you could teach even to a middle schooler.
Sure.
That give her a way of moving forward with it.
Great. No, that's very helpful, because it's just like, yeah, we just have to go back to definitions with her, like making sure she has clear definitions of racism, homophobia, but also so that she can ask the right questions back to these people.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
it's go ahead.
if they're going to accuse her of homophobia,
Yeah.
again, what does that mean? So do you think I'm afraid of homosexuals? I'm not afraid of homosexuals.
Right.
Are you afraid of Christians? Are you Christophobic? I mean, she can flip that around, because the reality is, she could even say, by your actions, it seems like the way you're defining homophobia, that if you disagree with it, that it's wrong, then wouldn't you be in the same camp by being against Christianity? Don't you believe Christianity is wrong? So then you're Christophobic.
Right.
Right. These are some things that again, questions become very good, because what it does is force them to have to think differently. If I'm just throwing jabs at you, I can do that all day. I can throw insults all day long. It's not going to change my thinking. You can throw insults back at me, and guess what? I just think you're a jerk, and now I ignore you. And I still feel in my pride that I'm right. Questions don't let people off the hook. That's
And
the
it
difference.
forces them into a conversation, which is
Correct.
what these kids are learning to not have. Like
Yeah.
tolerating each other and dealing with uncomfortable ideas,
Yeah.
Well, that
So
was very helpful. I appreciated that.
I'm going to bring everyone back in. See, I don't know if Pastor Justin, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Well, thank you. I thought that was a very good conversation to have.
Okay, well, that was enough of you. Oh, sorry.
Well, and you think about it.
Andrew, is you ask Justin if he has anything to say. Shouldn't you just assume he's got lots of stuff to say?
Oh, I know he's always got.
I always do.
Yeah, I did say Pastor Justin, so I know he's always got something to say.
So, Kristen, one thing I'll add to this is my family comes from. My children were in the Christian school environment. And one thing that really struck me as you were talking is that the infiltration of society has overtaken the philosophy and the thinking of what we call Christians, and unfortunately that boils down to the people that are doing the teaching. And I'm sorry to say that, but that boils down to the teaching. We brought our children out of even our Christian school because the philosophy and the theology was not matching the scripture. And, like Andrew was trying to talk to you about, and Anthony was saying, this boils down to a moral argument. Okay. Right. When they're screaming at you about racism, they're arguing a moral point, and yet they're using immorality to do it. They're attacking. And for Christianity, we don't have this persecution mindset. Right. So our children, unfortunately, are going to be the ones that are going to suffer for this, because our churches haven't taught or lived in the wake of persecution.
Sure.
So we have to, we're behind. And so as Christians, we have to step up and teach that the Bible tells us it's hard, but it is a blessed thing that we undergo the persecution in the same vein as our Lord went through. You know, he went through the greatest persecution, the greatest suffering, the greatest trials and tribulation ever. And we get to be in line with that as Christians. And your daughter's in a Christian school. And so she's got friends that want to, they're listening to everything that maybe you're not, maybe your family's not, and they're bringing that into their Christian school. But I do want to say one more thing about a Christian school, because it's going to surprise most people. Usually when public school, when they have the troublemakers, they kick them out. And you know where they end up going to? They end up going to Christian schools, because Christian schools will bring them in. They try to help them. They try to take care of them. And my son was actually at a Christian school, and there was a kid that came in, and he would just, he liked to fight, and he would cuss everybody out and scream and yell at them. We went to the principals and the teachers and said, we've got a problem here. These guys are getting violent and physical. My son was actually told, well, that's part of your ministry. So you're part of this ministry. So you need to actually just suck it up and take it. We left, you know, and here's the point. There comes a point in time when, as Christians, we might want to separate and to protect our children. And this is an idea. And I'm not saying that you're there. You may not be able to, you know, situations like that. But we do need to think about those things for the protection of our children, which is hard. And that is hard to deal with. I just want to encourage you and encourage your daughter that as a Christian, we do have answers. You know, like Andrew said, you know, just ask those simple questions of, well, is it, you know, ask those simple question. You know, if I'm being a racist, can you please tell me, what does it mean to be a racist? You know, where does that concept come from? Can you tell me? I mean, we're in a Christian school. We have a Christian environment here. Is bullying somebody as bad as racism? Is, you know, being hate-filled and you know, pejorative and all these things that the Bible says not to do? Is that as bad as the racism you're talking about? Is, you know, all of these accusations, what are they doing? And so you need to, when we're saying you need to, Andrew and Anthony, if you want to jump in here too, I think that'd be a good idea. When we're saying you need to, it's so easy for, you know, Andrew or Anthony or myself, who are constantly being berated by people. We've been seasoned in battle and in fire. You too have. You know, you've had to deal with, you know, people that have disagreed with your theology and your doctrine. You said you came from a Reformed background. You definitely have had people in the churches that have disagreed with you. Your daughter doesn't have that so much. You know, the one hardship with having children in a Christian home is how easy it is for them to identify with their friends in the world, or friends that are in the church, quote unquote.
Right.
And so we have to pray for them. We have to love them and cry with them and listen to them and just encourage them. And they're going to stumble. They're going to have a hard time with this, because now they've got their friends and their loved ones that they love, they care about, especially your daughter. Right. I've got a daughter who is, she wears all of her emotions right here on her sleeve.
Yeah.
And she loves everybody. She's a social butterfly, right? She can't help it. She is a social butterfly. And she walks around. Why don't they like me anymore? Why are they upset at me? Why do they, you know, why are they mad because I'm saying these things about homosexuality? And I have to go to scripture and I have to love them and pray with them and tell them that we're going to be rejected for the name of the Lord's sake. Okay. You know, and it's hard. Look, I trust me. I've had to deal with it so many times. It is hard, you know, to take your children through these things. It's not simple. Okay. But in the end, we're looking at the goal is to produce holiness and sanctification so that she can learn how to lovingly teach the truth amongst people who are not loving, because it's not true that your daughter is homophobic.
No,
it's not true that your daughter is a racist.
Mm-mm.
Is it loving for them to say that? No, it's a lie.
Yeah.
And so we don't accept the lie.
Right.
We know who we are in Christ.
Right.
Okay. I hope that helps.
No, that helps me tremendously. That was very profound, and yeah, it's hard. Just now that you really kind of hit the nail on the head as far as like, it is hurtful to see her go through that, but I've kind of been coming to grips with the fact of this is the world that they're going to grow up in, and she's going to have to biblically respond to this. So anyway, I thank all of you guys. Go ahead, sorry.
One of the things I often tell people too, and so I don't know if you know this or not, I'm a dentist. I sold my practice 2 years ago. For years, my wife and I worked in the practice together. Most of our staff members are Christian, at least in the last several years we practiced. And I was wondering and waiting for some point for somebody to walk in and be homosexual, trying to set us up, right? Have cameras on, right? That kind of thing. And so one thing I trained our staff, I really said, hey, just refer anybody to me. If they ask you any questions about Christianity or attack you about anything, just refer them to me. But the thing I train them on, in case they would forget to do this, is we want to make sure that we say, look, because when they come to your daughter, they're pointing the finger in the face, right? You're a racist. Why are you a racist? And understand critical race theory says that you're a racist and admit it. And if you don't admit it, it's even worse because you're still a racist, but you're not admitting it, right? That's a conundrum you're in.
Right.
But so from our point, we say, well, you know what? It's not about what I believe first and foremost. What does God say about it? And I do this presuppositionally because we go back to Romans 1. Everybody knows God exists. That 13-year-old that's coming up to your daughter knows the God of the Bible exists. That 13-year-old coming up to your daughter knows the moral law. It's written on her heart. And the conscience testifies and bears witness to God. And so we can use God's word to cut to the heart. So I love mixing in what Andrew said, where we take questions and ask them clarifying questions, make them defend their position. But at the same time, we're constantly pointing them back to God. Say, look, this isn't my words. It's this is not about me setting the rules.
Right. This is what the Bible says.
That's what God says. The God that exists. I'm sorry. So I often walk it back that way. And when we take the onus off of us, which is where they're trying to put it, and we put it on Almighty God where it goes, that's who their anger is really directed at. It's not at us. Right. They're angry at us because we're representing the one that they hate.
Right.
Ultimately, that's what it is. And as we said earlier, Marxism is an anti-Christian God idea, right? Yep. That is the whole basis of Karl Marx. So we have to understand this is an attack on Christians in general. It's why when we look at intersectionality, and I love to crack these jokes when I'm speaking. And if you go onto our Apologetics Live site, I did a live stream of this a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think it was last Wednesday. Now that I think about how to answer social issues, and you'll be able to see some of the tactics that we can use in talking to people.
Okay. That's really helpful. No, that's all very, very helpful. It's just that us parents, we have our work cut out for us, but the Bible never says parenting's easy. So,
one thing to encourage you with is I'm going to put you on our prayer list. And
I appreciate that. Thank
maybe
you.
In private, if you'd let me have your daughter's name, don't do it in public. But in private, I'll be glad to put her on the list.
If you can see the private chat here, or I can always give him her name.
Yeah, you can, Andrew. Yeah.
There's a private chat here as well.
Okay.
So that you can use.
Anyway.
But here's the thing for parents to realize: we're raising you're raising your daughter in a totally different culture than I raised my daughter in. It really it's that quick.
Yep.
The things that you have to, parents now have to train their kids how to endure persecution. Yep. That's something that before in Christianity didn't have to be done.
I never thought of it that way, as more of it. I just saw it as just give them the biblical answers, but it is a persecution mindset.
And it came fast too. I mean, as you see some of these people in government now and others talking about how we should round up the never Trumpers and put them into camps to retrain them. Who's next, right?
Well, and that's the thing is, that is the next thing that's coming is, the political thing is going to shift. You watch. I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet, but I'm going to tell you, the conservative movement will shift. Okay. It will. It'll start moving straight towards a social identity and start compromising because it already has Mitch McConnell and all those guys. They've always been rhinos, and I don't care what anybody says. They've always moved with the tides, and they're proving it. Look at Paul Ryan and all those guys.
January 6th showed it.
They're not an anomaly. They are not. When you had Lindsey Graham getting up there crying, "Oh, we've got to let him be," whatever, and I knew it was going to happen, but not trying to get political. My point is they're going to shift. We can't. We have to stand on the scripture and learn how to have our children and ourselves live within the confines of what's going on. Billy Cockrell says it's already in New Zealand. I know Billy really well, and the things that he's gone through and what he's dealt with. He comes from Texas, moves down here, and now he has to deal with this. What we're talking about right now, they're in it deep. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he has to be really careful what he says and everything else, because he could get in big trouble quick.
So the thing though, for parents is, we need to see that what we're doing now, unfortunately, is we have to train ourselves as well for persecution, because that's what's coming.
What's going to happen here before too long when they decide to shut us off from doing what we're doing right now from the podcast, because it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. So let me encourage you with one other thing, is that you should really consider going to the link right down at the bottom there to Israel Tour 2021, and you can join us in Israel, you and your husband and your daughter.
I want to. I keep telling my husband, and yes, they would. I'm like, come on, let's do it.
Well, you do it quick, because I think the email I got today says there's only like 6 spots left.
Hey,
so
do you want to go to Israel? Do you want to go to Israel?
Get him online here.
Do you want to go to Israel?
Gotta go. You gotta
sorry,
go.
I'm sorry. That was my daughter. She's standing here waiting, staring at me. So
no, but if anyone does want to join us, we are going to fill up. We're probably going to fill up in the next week or two. So go to IsraelTour2021.com. Justin Peters, Anthony Silvestro, Justin Pierce, myself, and Pastor David Cunningham will be doing the devotions, along with Pastor David Casey. We'll be doing devotions, so it's going to be a good time of 13 days in Israel. So I hope that you do come.
My 13-year-old son will be there. So
no way, that would be awesome.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all of your time and all of your wonderful answers and your pastoral advice.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you. I'll thank you from Striving for Eternity, because I know you've been a faithful supporter of ours, and so we appreciate that as well. So,
well, when COVID's over, hopefully you guys go back to Grace Bible in Redwood City, and then I'll make the trip down. And
who's waiting for COVID to be over? I'm just waiting for Pastor. Pastor and I haven't been able to sync up. He's been out in Pennsylvania, and I'm trying to get him to preach at my church when he comes out this way. So
well, then you guys have to declare that it's essential for us, because then we can't quarantine and all that. So it's essential business. Anyway, I don't want to take up.
I was told by Phil Johnson, if you listen to the Rap Report podcast, Phil Johnson told us that church is essential. So that's why we're going to Shepherd's Conference. And he told us we don't have to quarantine because church is essential.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I want to give you guys time to talk to other people. So I really appreciate all 3 of you. God bless you guys. Bye.
All right.
Thank you so much.
And greet your daughter for us.
I will.
All right. Bye. All right. So
powerful.
Yeah. Let me get to, and folks, if you want to help support us, you can go to strivingforeternity.org/support. That is one of many ways you can support us. They'll have a lot of things there, but if you do want to support us, you can always give a super chat. Give just a shout out. If there's something you liked what was heard, we will always announce super chats. I know there were some folks who are in here that had to drop out. I'm thinking of, Phil GM and Robert. We're going to try to get to your questions because you guys didn't get back in, but I'm going to add John, the atomic apologist. So John, you had a question for us.
No, more like it's a rant. Before I get started, though, I just wanted to, at the beginning of the show, there you were talking about preaching in a emergency rhyme, so I thought I'd give that a shot. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. See, it talks about total depravity. But anyways,
Well, that was a good shot. It was good.
Okay, I have news for you. Stephen Furtick already did that, so you're out.
He wasn't as good as Clifford, trust me.
James Pastor beats me again, I tell you.
We do have a KTS question. Any chicken therapy tonight?
No, actually, I already put the chickens all away, so
okay.
it's dark right now. So yep,
We had Chick-fil-A earlier.
And Billy wants you to know that he's not buying that CD.
Okay, good.
Oh, Gary would though.
Yeah. So,
a quick rant. I just want to let you let the listeners know that what happened over this past last week. I made a comment on Facebook group somewhere. And it was just kind of a passing and all that. And I noticed that this one woman responded saying, "I'm Mormon, and I love the Book of Matthew," or something like that. And so I just kind of snarkily said, "Psst, Mormons are Christians." And so basically that brought on a huge discussion, and then I kid you not, this is okay. Just to let you know, this is what Mormons do now. They're not going up to your door anymore, okay, on their little bikes, and a white shirt and little name tag and tie. No, what they do now is they're on social media. And the thing is, I swear I had 3 Mormons contact me through Facebook Messenger. And they all had the same script, basically saying, if you have any questions, my name is Booker, or I'm Chet. I want to know if you have any questions. I'm an LDS elder, blah, blah, blah. So I started chatting with this one guy, this one kid, Booker, and he starts, asking. We're going back and forth, okay, and I'm trying to speed this up. I don't want to bore you guys, but anyways, so what happened was I decided to go ahead and create a separate chat room with Booker, and I told him, hey, bring on one of your other friends, one of your LDS elders there for accountability. That's fine, and I'll bring in some of my friends. So I brought in Andrew and Anthony and Justin, and we had we had all these little kind of back and forths. But basically, Andrew though was really encouraging these guys to come on the show.
Please come on the show.
Come on the show, guys. Just please, it would be nice. And ignore the cat.
Hard to ignore as it crawls over your face.
Yeah,
But there's an interesting. I was glad you brought it up and that you came in and brought that up, because there was something that I noticed in the group chat that's a tactic that I see them doing. Anthony and I have noticed that with Jehovah's Witnesses now, they kind of just avoid you. Once they realize you understand what they believe, you understand what true Christianity is, they just turn and say, "Oh, we're not here to debate. We're just here to answer questions. If you have, and I'll say, but I'm asking you questions." And they go, no. We don't want to talk with you. We just want to have peaceful conversation. Now, what we had with the Mormons is you saw that they suddenly said, once there was disagreement,
yeah,
it was
contention.
that was contention.
Yeah.
The spirit of contention.
And so what they're conditioned to do is say, no, that any disagreement, that's contention. But if you notice, what I did was I said, well, you guys disagreed with us. That's contentious. And here's the thing that I would say with Mormonism. And so, I was hoping they would come in. I knew they wouldn't. I pretty much knew they wouldn't, because these folks never do. But if they end up listening to this, here's the thing. What you end up seeing is they argue that you're contentious, and the purpose of that is to shut you down so that you won't discuss anything that might disagree with what they wish was to be true, what they want to believe. And so they want to just shut it down. But the reality is, when you look at something like Mormonism, for example, Mormonism started because Joseph Smith supposedly got a revelation that all other religions are wrong, and he had to restore true Christianity.
Yeah.
Well, what is he doing there? He's being contentious. Their religion is built on contentiousness. They're saying every other religion is wrong. That's contentious. Well, if they say they're against it, and they got to give up Mormonism.
Well, let me ask you a question. I know I did. See, I knew you were going to do that.
See, but before you ask your question, KT is talking here about cat therapy tonight because of the cat. but wait, Chris says it's a catastrophe.
You can't even say it. Catastrophe
by John. So we got a lot of cat jokes going on. Humble Clay is saying cat and chicken.
Oh, and then KT says cats and chickens don't go together too well. So,
They do.
So I want to ask this is within the Mormon theological construct, are we Joseph Smith didn't have a bone to pick with any of the other false religions that were out there. His big one was with Christianity, and any denomination that he interacted with was false in his teaching. Am I right?
No, he had issues with Catholicism. It was mostly the branches of Christianity. You're right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But keep in mind at that time, Islam really wasn't a player in the United States.
Yep.
You would think if you understand Mormon history, they get the idea that Jesus, after he died on the cross, came to the Americas and taught the Indians here. They also believe that the American Indians were really the lost tribes of Israel. They migrated here through South America, and they were the Mayans and made their way up. Real interesting thought with that, because genetically, the Mayans were Chinese. We know that because they have a Mongolian spot, which is something that only Asians would have. So, and Mayans have that. Also, when I was down there at the Mayan ruins, and we had a Mayan guide, and he's using some of the Mayan language, and my bride, who understands Chinese, picked up some of the words because they're Chinese dialect. And so what you end up seeing is that the Mayans were from a Chinese, not, Middle Eastern. So, but they argue that Joseph Smith came to the Americas and taught them, taught them the truth. And so it is interesting that he didn't condemn any of the, American Indian rituals in there, which you would think if that's what he was going after, especially since he went west where there still were some American Indians and tribes, you would think that's where he'd find some of the issues that he's trying to address with this. But he really focused on Christianity some. Let's try. We're going to try to, John, I'm going to try to get some more people in here. So I'm going to put you backstage. Nicholas is here, so I'll bring Nicholas up. So Nicholas, you have a question for us. You may be muted. Well, I can see that you're muted.
I'm just about as smart as Anthony, I guess. I'm just kidding. Sorry, I could not help myself.
I don't care.
Well, you may be a little smarter. You're doing CrossFit, right?
Is that smart though? I don't know.
Hey, wait a minute. Don't bust on Anthony. He goes to the gym to make phone calls while his wife.
I was going to say, he's not working out. I know what he's doing. He's sitting there going,
I'm walking on the treadmill
because they have this water massager thing that he likes to sit on, and
that's a good workout. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So Nicholas, what do you have for us tonight?
Yeah. So basically, this question should be pretty quick, but I just wanted to get your thoughts, just considering everything that's going on, and it seems like I know a few brothers here locally who have been buying into this whole vaccine as the mark of the beast thing. So first, it's kind of a two-part question. The first would be, what are your thoughts on this vaccine thing going on right now? And the second would be, from my understanding of what I see in Revelation and even in Daniel, kind of pointing to that specific spot in Revelation with the false prophet and the Antichrist. To me, it looks like they're are certain events that need to happen, and it's not going to be some secret thing that we're going to just God's people are going to fall into and accidentally get. So I just wanted to know if I'm accurate in regard to the.
I'll answer that question first. We're going to try to keep Anthony on time with vaccine because he's already done 2 hours on this.
Wow, we're going to midnight now.
I linked them earlier. Well, actually, I linked it. He has 1 hour that he has 2 different episodes. If you go to the Striving Fraternity YouTube channel, they're there. He does have it. I put it in the show in the links here, that in the comments on the video. So, but if you basically, you're right. I mean, the mark of the beast is not going to be something that people are duped by. You're not going to get it thinking that, later I figured out what it was. No, people know what this is. This is a way of making payments. You're not going to be able to do any commerce without it. And it's going to involve, worship to a false god, whoever, the Antichrist is. So no, this is not the vaccine is not the mark of the beast. Besides the fact that you don't get the mark in your forehead or, right hand, which is where the mark's going to be. So I don't see them vaccinating in the forehead. I don't know, maybe, but Anthony, I'm just going to tell you, we have about 8 minutes, and I know that he may actually keep to the time because he's got to catch an early morning flight.
It's true. I told my wife, 10 o'clock, I'm off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'll believe that when I see it.
No, actually, I agree with you completely, Andrew. This is not. Look, I hate vaccinations. I hate every one of them, and this one I hate even more. And but this does not fit this does not fit the defining characteristics of the mark of the beast. So it's not like it's being tattooed, like Andrew said, into your forehead. This is So.
All right. So with that I saw you muted yourself. So I just want to try to get to one other question. Do you have anything else, Nicholas?
No, that's it. Other than, I just go to your website for the link to donate, right, on Striving for Eternity?
Yeah, you could. The link to that is just strivingforeternity.org/support.
Okay, perfect. No, that'll do it for this week. Lord willing, I'll have another question for next week.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. So let's get to the question that Phil had asked earlier. He was having, I think, connection issues and dropped out. The question he had asked is about female deacons. So let me see if I can run through this kind of quickly. And I will see whether Pastor Justin and Anthony agree with me. But if we look at 1 Timothy chapter 3, we have a layout of pastors and deacons. Okay. We have several qualifications here. So it starts with verse 1. This is a trustworthy statement. If a man aspires to the office of overseer, it is a fine work that he desires to do. Okay. Verse 2 is an overseer must be, and there's a list of things for an overseer, what we call pastor. All right. Verse 8. It says deacons. By the way, we do have a word in English for this. It is servant, is waiter of tables. And so that's what this would be. We transliterate it as deacons because of the fact that by the time they were doing an English Bible, the deacons were considered leaders, and they didn't want them. They realized you can't call them servants if they're leaders. So they create a new English word. We get the word deacon. So deacons likewise must be. Now, I want you to look at what we end up having. The men of integrity, or dignity, not double-tongued, or addicted to much wine, or fond of sordid gain, but holding to the mystery of faith with a clear conscience. Now, what do you notice of all those things? Dignity, double-tongued, addicted to wine, not addicted to sordid gain, holding to the mystery of the faith, male or female, that could be true for. Okay? So you then have, as in many translations in verse 11 says, women likewise. So you have this a trustworthy statement in verse 1. You have about the overseers, likewise deacons, likewise women. Now, some translations, I think it's King James, that will say wives. Bad translation. This can mean wives. However, the term
by the way, calls it wives.
Say that again.
ESV also says wives in verse 11.
Wives there too? Okay. Now, here's why I don't think it's a bad translation. When we see this with wives is always when it's connected with the husband. Here, the argument that some make is that the husband is the deacon. So this is the deacon's wives. And they have to have some sort of characteristics to now, if the deacon's wife is not qualified, does that mean the deacon's not qualified? Well, you'd have to say yes if that's what your thinking is, but then why don't the overseers, the pastors, why aren't their wives having qualifications? So there's a problem there. But as we look at it, it says women likewise. I think the women are female deacons, women that are serving as servants. They're not they're not leaders. So this isn't a problem with what was just said in the ending of 1 Timothy chapter 2 about women not having authority. They're servants. So like the women likewise should be dignified, not malicious gossips, temperate, faithful in all things. Now I want you to notice what happens in the text here. Verse 12 goes back to deacons. Deacons must be. Now look at the list here, where the list that we see of the deacons starting in verse 8, 9, and 10, it could be for male or female. 11 is some things specific for these females. Then you have verse 12, and it says deacons must be husbands of one wife, good managers of their children, of their household. Okay, these are things that are only true of the men. So now you have things that it goes back to the men. So you have some of these attributes that should be, or characteristics that should be for both male and female, just the women and just the men. So I think what you have here is a case that you have male deacons and female deacons, and both of them are servants under the headship or under the leadership, under the authority of a pastor. And so what you end up seeing, and Clergy Talk is saying, didn't the first century have female deacons and servants of the Lord? We're not sure, but many people think that when you see, Apollos, Priscilla and Aquila, that they might have been male and female deacons. We don't know that for sure. So essentially, to answer the question, female deacons, I think, are okay with a caveat. And here's the caveat. Some churches, their deacons are leaders.
Yep.
And so they're not serving as deacons, they're serving as leaders. And because of that, in those scenarios, if you're in a church where the deacons are leaders, I would say no.
No.
What you should do is correct the role of deacon. They're servants. They take care of the day-to-day stuff. And then in that case, having a female deacon, I think, is fine. But they shouldn't have a leadership role.
Amen.
So I actually take a position. I don't think women should be deacons. I think this is an addendum into this, that I think that it talks about women that are serving in the church, but I don't think so. I think that they can function the same way as a deacon does without the title.
But the thing is, the thing you're looking at too, though, is that you also have, as Andrew said, we have a narrative in our Christian culture where a deacon is a church leader, but the Bible doesn't maintain that. The church leadership is an elder-led leadership. They are the elders. It's not just one pastor who is an elder. It's the elders plural, and there's a plurality of elders. Nobody is the one dominator of the group. And the servants, think about it. The deacon motif is that they are the chief of the cheerleading squad. In other words, their role is to serve and encourage everyone else, to stir one another up to love and good works. They're to be the one that holds to the doctrine of the church, of the word of God, and they are firm in it. And they're the men are when we say leading, it's the person that's running the fastest to pick up the chairs, the person that's running the fastest to encourage everybody. How can we help others? They're not leading in the sense of you're going to do this. They're the ones that are running out there constantly to do the work. And that's what he's talking about. That's a spiritual, it's a spiritual issue of sanctification. And that's why you have all these different qualifications separated from the pastor down to the deacon, and then to the deaconess, as John MacArthur says.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing is we have to recognize two things. One, Humble Clay is saying he misses Anthony time. Well, if Anthony hadn't disagreed with us, we wouldn't have gone over time.
Yep.
So Anthony was here over 10 o'clock because he disagreed. So for the record, folks, he didn't end right at 10 o'clock. Why? Because he extended it because we had to discuss more.
So now he's got to go.
We tried. And so, we're on Anthony time.
We're on Anthony's time now.
So here's the thing. And let me explain that, folks. Anthony time is whenever we go long, because when Anthony would host the shows, they always went over the 2-hour mark.
I went to 1:59:10. So I just want to make that clear.
So the thing is that, just to wrap this up with the deacons, we have to understand that in the first century, they weren't as hung up on titles as we are in stuff. So they wouldn't have had, I think, the titles for the title is just the women. The women are servants, just like the men are servants.
Yep.
I don't know how much the men were trying to make an issue of trying to say, well, this is something different. This is a special title that, I don't know that was the case. So we have to look at the culture and say, would they have called them deaconesses? We don't know. And there seems to be some early church documents that seem to indicate maybe that that title was used, but it's a thing where if a church doesn't have female deacons, it's not in sin. I think if you have a church that has female deacons and they're not leadership, I don't think it's a sin. But if they're given a title where they're kind of put, special status, that could be a problem for anyone. So with that, we're gonna sign out. Again, folks, if you want to help support us, just go to strivingforeternity.org/support. This is a ministry of Striving for Eternity. We do need support. COVID has been a rough year. We have not been able to travel. If you would like to have us come out to your church, do some of our seminars, go to strivingforeternity.org, go under the About and schedule a speaker. You'll see some topics we speak on. You'll see some of the Anthony loves all the comments. We like Anthony time. So everyone likes a longer program. So the thing is that we do need to know if you want us to come out to your church and do some of our seminars. Anthony and I will be doing a Bible Interpretation Made Easy seminar this weekend in Indiana. But we just recently were down in Florida doing our social justice seminar. And we're going to be in Florida in a couple of months. In May, we're going to be doing our Snatch Them from the Flames, a discernment seminar. We have other seminars, apologetics, evangelism, creation science, a lot of different seminars. We can come into your church and be able to come in and teach your folks. And some people go, well, you don't know how small our church is. We have a really small church. Yes, those are the churches we target at Striving for Eternity. We try to do that because we want to get the churches that can't afford to have people that are the big name speakers where it's going to cost lots of money. This is where we need monthly support. Those of you who support us monthly, you allow us to go into a church like we're doing this weekend. That we're going to be doing a seminar, and we're going to do it as if there was hundreds of people there, and there's probably going to be less than 15 people. And we don't care. We're going to come out anyway to that church to help that local church, to equip that church so that they can be equipped, they could grow, and that they would be able to serve Christ more. That's what monthly support at Striving for Eternity helps with. If you have a small church and you think it's too small, we can never have one of these seminars in our church, go to strivingforeternity.org, go to the page under About and then schedule a speaker. And if it fits within our schedule, we'll come to see you. So that's just something for you to consider, but we do appreciate if you find value in this program or any of the things that we do at Striving for Eternity, please consider helping to keep us going. It is difficult to do this. If you have any questions, you want to contact us, the email is info@strivingforeternity.org, info@strivingforeternity.org. Until next week, prepare your questions to challenge us, because that's what we're here for. And leave us a review at lovethepodcast.com/apologeticslive. See you next week.